Hello, my fellow YouTubers and subscribers, and welcome to my rant on the sequel to The Matrix. Well, the first sequel, of course. The Matrix Reloaded. Directed once again by the Wachowskis and was released in 2003. Yeah, the exact same year as the third one. Oh, The Matrix Reloaded. Well, let's just get on with it. There's no point dressing it up. Okay, so the plot of The Matrix Reloaded, although there actually isn't a plot, but for the purposes of the review, I will read the synopsis. Freedom fighters Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus continue to lead the revolt against the machine army, unleashing their arsenal of extraordinary skills and weaponry against the systematic forces of repression and exploitation. You know, all of that kind of fancy jargon aside, basically they are trying to stop the machines from invading this planet called Zion. And in the meantime, Neo is also having some premonitions or visions of Trinity's death, and he's trying to discover why he's able to see that and how to evade her death. And they also have to go from, person to person on this long, convoluted journey where in the end they meet this guy called the Architect, who explains some of the origins of the creation of the Matrix. Or, well, he tries to explain it. Yeah, as if I haven't already kind of alluded to, The Matrix Reloaded. This movie is a fucking mess. I really don't like this movie. I don't hate it, I don't despise it, but I really don't like it. This movie is so confusing. The story is awful. It's awful! I can't understand a fucking thing that's going on in this movie. The fact is, this is only the first half of a movie. Yeah, technically, The Matrix 2 and 3, Reloaded and Revolutions, they were made simultaneously. They were in production at the same time. They were made back to back. And they were released in the same year. That doesn't bode well, does it? Yeah, because we get a trailer for the third movie at the end of this film. But as for The Matrix Reloaded, the word convoluted doesn't even begin to cover the fucking plot holes of this movie. This movie raises more questions than it answers, and that is the total opposite of what a movie should do. I have several questions of this movie. How can Neo foresee Trinity's death? How does Mr. Smith come back? How does Mr. Smith clone himself? How is Neo an anomaly of some kind? What the hell is the Architect actually trying to explain to us? I mean, I could go on and on, but basically, I kept asking myself all these questions, but the main question being, what the fuck is actually going on? I've got no fucking idea what the plot is and what the hell's going on. It's just such a bloated mess. They're trying to throw all these different things into this movie, and this movie is long. It's like 2 hours, 18 minutes, and it feels long. The first act of this movie drags quite a lot. It takes its time to drag, and I understand, introducing the planet of Zion was world building, and I appreciate that the movie was trying to expand the universe of The Matrix, but I just felt like it got lost in so many knots. Again, it's just such a confusing narrative. It's really hard to keep up with this movie, so in the end, don't watch it for the story. Watch it for the action sequences. I mean, the action sequences are good. There's no doubt about that. And they are definitely the best thing about the movie and the reason to watch it. The action spectacle is very entertaining, and there are plenty of action sequences to keep you going. But for me, the action in the first movie was more impressive because at least it was more contained. This movie goes big, and this movie tries to give you the biggest spectacle that you could ever wish for. And granted, I'm sure most people will appreciate that. I just felt that the action sequences in this movie, they just go on for too long. They just started to get really repetitive and boring, and the novelty of these sequences really wore off very quickly. Like the first movie, some of the effects are a bit dated, but, again, I can forgive that because, of course, it was made nearly 20 years ago. But like I said, it's just so long, particularly the freeway chase. A lot of people go on about how good that is, and granted, it is a very impressive sequence, but it's at least 10 minutes long. That is way too long for an action sequence. That is such a long action sequence. It doesn't need to be that long. You get to the climax of the film where Neo meets the Architect, and the Architect is trying to explain the genesis behind his idea of creating the Matrix and the fact, and how Neo kind of ties into that. I was confused. I just did not understand it. I still don't know what was going on, to be honest. And then we have that final sequence where they all have to escape their base when the machines come and attack them. And Neo manages to electrocute the machines, and then at the end we see him hooked up to the machine with this other guy. Again, I was totally lost with the story, so I had no clue what any of it meant. I think some people could enjoy this movie as a guilty pleasure, so on the flip side of my argument for the negativity, the people that enjoy this movie probably just enjoy it for the spectacle, because the story is a mess, so you can't understand it. And I think in that case, this movie is good. Like the first movie, this movie definitely has some of the most impressive action sequences ever put to film, but at the same time, without a good story, without good characters, it really just falls flat. I also just don't buy the romance between Trinity and Neo. I mean, most of the actors are pretty deadpan in this movie. I mean, I understand that they're trying to play serious characters, but Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss basically, making out. It was pretty awkward. I mean, well, more than that, they were having sex. I mean, the sex scene in this movie is cringy. Ugh. Intercut with that massive Cyan rave scene which was going on, and again, got no idea why that was included in the film. The design of the movie is really good. I like the design of the world, and the CG for its time looks really good. And the planet of Cyan, it's actually pretty cool. It does look decent in terms of the production design. And much like the Star Wars prequels, we do have some political courtroom scenes, which we all wanted in a Matrix movie. And I understand, again, that was added for world building, but I just think it really dampens the pace of this movie. In terms of the cast, I will just say this. Keanu Reeves as Neo, I mean, he tries. He's a little bit wooden in this movie. I don't think he's quite as good as he was in the first one. He got away with it in the first one. Sometimes deadpan acting is good, but in this particular film, given that there's more emotion, the fact that we're supposed to invest more in the love story and Trinity's death, I just didn't buy it. Much the same with Carrie-Anne Moss. They just look so awkward together. I honestly would have preferred if Neo and Morpheus got together. I mean, they seem to trust each other a bit more. Speaking of which, Laurence Fishburne as Morpheus, he continues to be very good. I really do think those three make the movie in terms of the cast. I mean, obviously, well, clearly, because they are the three leads. Although I do think all three of them did perform a lot better in the first movie. But again, it's probably down to the fact that they got a very terrible script from the writers. Hugo Weaving, I'd like to say that I liked him in this film, but I just didn't. I'm really sorry. It's not him himself. His performance was okay. It was perfectly acceptable. But like I said, how the hell did the character come back? We saw him get killed in the first film, and now he's managed to come back to life, and he's managed to clone himself? What? And there's that really ridiculous over-the-top fight scene, which is in some kind of rural area. It's like a park of some kind, next to some apartments or something. And he's just constantly cloning himself, and Neo is a total badass, and he's whipping their asses, and after a while, again, it just goes on too long. I just sat there thinking, how much more of this can I take? But like I said, the action sequences were impressive in the first movie, but the novelty has worn off, because if you give somebody too much of something, they start to want it less and less. Much like giving someone like chocolate syrup or pizza, I like it, but I wouldn't have it every day. And that's kind of how I feel about the Matrix movies, certainly the sequels. I like the action, but I wouldn't have it every day. And also, the movie's length. This movie is too long. It's nearly 2 hours, 20 minutes, and it feels long. It feels too long, but at the same time, there's so much in the movie that it's so hard to digest it. And again, so uneven. I mean, uneven is an understatement. We also have Monica Bellucci in this movie. She makes a cameo as this French man's wife. Not sure really what her role is, other than to be a plot device. She's supposed to be someone who gets them to someone that they need to open a door, which leads to another person. It's just a never-ending, cycle of people, going from point A to point A to point A to point A to point A. It's like, we've got to go to this person so they can get us to this person, so they can get us to that person. It's like, movie, slow down, take your time, explain the plot, beginning, middle, end. How hard is that? So yeah, her role is completely pointless. And then there's that really cringy sequence where she says, I want you to kiss me, but imagine that you're kissing her. What the fuck fuck? You know, that's ridiculous. I think that's a stupid thing. I don't know whether it was meant to be funny. I don't think it was. It's just really awkward because we're supposed to invest in this love story with Neo and Trinity just stands there and lets it happen against her better judgment. I mean, clearly she's reacting to it, but at the same time, why? Why does she want... She's only just met this guy. You know, Monica Bellucci's character's only just met this guy. And obviously, we discover that she's had a bad relationship with her husband. He's been cheating and he's been lying. But that kiss with her and Neo was... Ugh, it was really weird. So this movie has production values. And, you know, it does look impressive. Certainly for the time, it looks impressive. But it just falls apart, sadly. It just falls apart because of the very messy narrative. It doesn't make sense half the time, and it's very hard to understand. It's so hard to follow. And I know that this movie is only a setup for the third film, which is Revolutions, but honestly, what is it trying to set up? You know, I don't know. It feels like it's trying to set that movie up, but also tell its own story at the same time. It feels like two films in one. It's a fucking mess. It's fucking bloated. And what a disappointment. After the majesty of the first one, this is a steaming turd. So overall, I don't like this movie. I think The Matrix Reloaded is a terrible movie, and I'm going to score it a 3 out of 10. Reload. I don't know whether it's the worst in the franchise. I haven't seen the fourth movie yet, and I'm going to watch the third one very soon, and I haven't seen the third for quite a number of years. But yeah, that's my opinion of The Matrix Reloaded. But if you enjoy the movie, that's totally fine. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this review. What do you think of this film? Please comment down below, let me know. Please hit the subscribe button for future content, and stay tuned next time when I review The Matrix Revolutions, which, until recently, was the last movie of the franchise. So anyway, thank you very much, and as always, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. Thank you. See ya. Bye for now.